I think this is a coming of age, really, naturally, because when I say coming of age, I mean collectively Chinese entrepreneurs.
Yes.
A lot of these founders are either my age or even, a few years younger than me. I've talked to some of them. So I really can relate to why they want to build a business that targets the global market instead of just China. Right. So in the good old days, you can build a business and start from China and then think about expanding beyond. However, that is not possible anymore. As long as it's a consumer-facing software product, immediately from day one, you have to think about, do I build for China or do I build for global ex-China? Because the examples of TikTok and Jing and many other smaller companies have already shown them that you cannot do both. It's not possible to serve both.
Welcome to Analyse Asia, the premier podcast dedicated to dissecting the pulse of business, technology, and media in Asia. I'm Bernard Leong, and China is definitely the talk of the town. And what better way with me today is Jing, Asia Bureau Chief for the Information, to come back to tell me what is really going on, the pulse of all most important tech developments coming out of China and also Asia broadly. And in this episode, of course, we want to talk about ByteDance pivotal moment, the new wave of AI startups funded by the Chinese venture capital and also talent abroad. Jing, it's great to have you back. So can you tell us what you have been up to lately? And of course, I know DeepSeek must have made you very busy since earlier this year, but where are you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, DeepSeek has been this really surprising story that, in my opinion, just made the coverage of China AI much, much more exciting. And then in addition to that, what we have been busy covering is more like the DeepSeek effect, right? How DeepSeek is changing everything from how you think about the cost of developing AI to the how it affects the U.S.-China chip war, etc. And on top of that, there's a lot of I and my colleagues at the Information have been doing a lot of interesting stories, which we can get into in a little bit, such as humanoid robotics, the latest of the China venture capital landscape, ByteDance, and also new wave of agentic startups, agentic AI startups, funded by Chinese entrepreneurs and programmers, but targeting a global ex-China consumer base.
So I have been reading the Information since I'm one of your subscribers. I think
Thank
I
you
was
for
started
support.
using your deep research tool as well. So to really start, because I'm focusing on a couple of stories. I think between us, we have always been talking about ByteDance at the crossroads now. So maybe just to start with the story of ByteDance. So in your recent reporting, I think ByteDance 2024 results has been showing international revenue growth, but a slowing profit margin. I think now it exceeds Meta, right? If I didn't get it wrongly. So what are the major takeaways there?
Yeah, so ByteDance's revenue on a quarterly basis has been closing in on Meta for quite some time now, and it passed that milestone as of the first half of this year. However, it's worth noting that on the revenue and on profit and profit margin basis, ByteDance still lags far behind Meta. Meta actually has been posting very strong results in the last few quarters. And then it is true that, I think it's just the sort of the natural course of direction of travel. When a company becomes big enough, the growth rate will slow down, right? Actually, if you look at ByteDance, a company that has hundreds of billions of dollars in revenue still can grow 20-30% a quarterly revenue basis is already quite impressive. Many companies of that size of revenue either would have slowed down or grow much less. And then, basically the last two and a half years, as I and my colleague Drew Osawa have been reporting ByteDance financials, the overall theme is that the international business, majority of which comes from TikTok, has been contributing a bigger and bigger share of the overall revenue. However, we understand from talking to our sources that TikTok overall is still not profitable. ByteDance as a whole still generates most of its money from, by money I mean profit, from the domestic business.
Which is Douyin basically.
Douyin and Toutiao, right? And then from advertising and e-commerce, live commerce related revenue. So these are the biggest drivers.
So it's actually mainly the revenues and profits mainly driven by the domestic economy of China.
Yes, because that is still the lion's share of the company's revenue and profit. It's just that, you see, for example, 3 years ago, maybe the China business was, off the top of my head, like more than 80%, make up for more than 80% of the revenue.
Yeah.
Now it's like, just below 80, right? Wow. It's a very slow transition. But you see sort of that's where the direction of travel is. And then the other thing that is worth noting is that as we know and we have reported several times, that ByteDance founder Zhang Yiming is really focused on and very hands-on about ByteDance AI development.
Yes.
And then to that end, ByteDance actually has increased the capex spending, which also has been reflected in its earnings since this year. And as a matter of fact, that the company told investors that they expect to continue to be on sort of like a high capex trend as well, because the company feels is sort of now is the time to invest.
Seems like Zhang Yiming is like Mark in an existential mode, founder mode, and just go all in on AI.
Yeah, I mean, actually, there has been, I don't know about in the US, but definitely in China, I've seen talks of people comparing Zhang and Zuckerberg as sort of like, in China, there's Zhang, and then in the US, there's Zuckerberg. And then they compare it for several reasons. First is that ByteDance is quite a similar in terms of business model, right? It's predominantly a social media company, now very sort of all in on AI. But then also because both entrepreneurs are very aggressive in hiring AI talent. We all know what Meta has been doing in the last couple of months.
But has Zhang Yiming went out and splashed, let's say, like the same kind of salaries to DeepSeek researchers?
Not that we have seen, obviously. Because to be honest, I mean, just on average, this the pay in China cannot be compared in Silicon Valley to begin with, right?
It's about 1/5, right? So.
But if I were to give you one recent example, it's also a piece of news that my colleagues at Information broke, is that ByteDance successfully poached a long-term and veteran, researcher at Google DeepMind, someone who was in Silicon Valley to go work for ByteDance, and that person, Wu Yonghui, now is one of the leaders of ByteDance's AI development.
I see.
So that's where sort of you see the parallel.
Actually, the revenues and profit parallel also makes it really interesting, because it makes me feel like it's also like a bit like the Apple iOS, where Apple iOS is holding most of the profits, but the revenue is smaller than Androids, which have the most revenues, but actually the profit share is actually extremely low. It feels that way for me when I look at ByteDance, what you mentioned about ByteDance just now, as compared to Meta.
Yeah, but though I would say though, ByteDance is a privately held company. It's not public listed, so it does not have to succumb to sort of quarterly earnings and Wall Street pressure. So it probably doesn't really need to like sort of squeeze so much out of its revenue dollar.
But how long can they stay private, right? I mean, Stripe, Stripe can
that
stay
is
private.
Literally the $1 trillion question.
Correct.
Right?
Okay, but we always talk about the much more bigger question. I think TikTok is slowly sort of helped to reduce ByteDance major revenue share, which actually concentrated in China. So they're actually getting more international revenues. How significant now is TikTok to ByteDance future, right? Especially considering all the conversations that were supposed to be some TikTok US deal going on. There's a lot of regulatory pushback, and the role of also how the Chinese government is looking at the deal itself.
Yeah. Let me just try to unpack that a
Yeah,
little bit.
Correct. It's a big subject.
Yeah, when we talk about TikTok, I understand a lot of the attention tends to be paid to the US business.
Yep.
And obviously, it's not just because it's a very big user base for TikTok, but it's also probably the most, like, generates the most revenue for TikTok. As I'm sure you know, TikTok has very big user base in Southeast Asia, but in terms of the ARPU you can get, clearly in the US is much higher. So we're actually recording this episode at a very interesting time, as we know the US and China just started the third round of trade talks in Spain yesterday, September 14th. And what happened just before the talk started was that the Ministry of Commerce in China on Friday issued a statement in my memory, I think for the first time, confirmed that TikTok will be included on the agenda of the talks. Because if you remember, I think a while ago, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent was interviewed on, I believe, CNBC. When he was asked whether TikTok was part of the trade talks, he gave a really ambivalent answer. He said yes and no. So now that is I find it very interesting that almost unprompted that the Chinese Ministry of Commerce would send that a statement. And obviously, the statement also says many other things, right? Like, China wants to ensure the TikTok can continue to operate in the U.S. And then safeguard the rights of Chinese companies in the U.S. I mean, it doesn't really go beyond what the Chinese government has said before on this subject, but the fact that they issued this statement just before the talk started, to me, feels like China is probably signaling that it is willing to make a deal. I think if I were to take a step back, right, we all know what happened in China between 2020 to 2022 when there was this brutal crackdown on all the internet platforms. I think that tells you that Chinese leader Xi Jinping, he personally doesn't, for the lack of a better word, doesn't really care about the internet platforms. Like, he doesn't seem to believe that internet platforms can contribute to China's economic and technological advancement the way that, sort of so-called hard tech or deep tech can. So for a long time, I think people see like TikTok as a sort of just a card that China has on its hands. It's not something that China doesn't want to give up. I think for China sort of feels like it is probably in the slight upper hand in terms of the TikTok situation. China knows that it has something that the US really wants, so that it is just waiting to see what can TikTok, what it can exchange from TikTok. So I think anything is just basically, in my opinion, impossible to predict TikTok's future in the absence of any kind of resolution of this issue. Yeah,
I think we will eventually get to some resolution of the issue, because I think the bigger conversation now in terms of the Chinese government is in the semiconductors. You can already see some of the tech giants who used to be in the e-commerce, like Ali Cloud is now building their own chip, right? You could already see Huawei is now talking about the 5 nanometers and 7 nanometers. I think it seems that even the Chinese tech companies seems to have also pivoted to hard tech on there. And they are all, I would say, to be quite honest, while we talk about how great DeepSeek is, I think Quen is a pretty interesting model, because Quen is the model that actually DeepSeek did distill from. So, and I think Quen, I think the latest one was actually top of the generative AI leaderboard. So, but coming back to the
in
question,
terms of open source.
That's right. Yeah. So from your perspective now, right, how does now ByteDance compare, say, with the global peers if you think about Meta and Google in terms of AI innovation. I think Meta, I think more or less they have made a big reset. They hired a super team now that's supposed to help them turn around. I think Google has come back quite a lot. I think they're getting stronger and stronger and putting probably the likes of Anthropic and OpenAI on their heels. But where is ByteDance from your point of view?
Yeah, I mean, ByteDance has sort of gone quiet in the sense that, I remember, I think like all over 2024, I think ByteDance was like the indisputable leader in China. That was before Quen, gained traction, before DeepSeek became a phenomenon. So even till this day, Doubao chatbot still ranks as the number one consumer app in the generative AI space. However, ByteDance hasn't said anything at all or done anything in the open source, camp. Like
Yes.
it hasn't said or done or released any of its models or open sourced any of its models. It also stopped participating in all the leaderboard ranking. I don't know if you noticed.
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So
Which surprises me because they show a lot of research papers, I think in 2024, but it never was ever close to like launching something that is as profound as what DeepSeek has managed to do. Or even some of the other major large language models like Kimi or Zhipu, for example. Is it just because maybe they didn't have the team to do it, or maybe they were caught on the backpedaling back foot, so now they are like trying to chase up?
I don't know why they don't participate in the leaderboard anymore. It definitely is. It just sort of adds to the layer of
Secrecy?
opaqueness.
Yeah.
Yeah. However, I definitely would not write off their where they are. I think. I mean, my understanding is they have a lot of people working on this, and then they are doing great work. They are just, for whatever reason, haven't told the world.
Or maybe they are working on a closed model. That also could be the possibility. Because
Yeah,
I
I
think
mean,
there is
they
no
have
Chinese
been.
closed models yet.
Yeah, they have always been only done closed models,
Yes,
right?
correct.
So, and then even if you have a closed model, but if you don't participate in the leaderboard, then still there's very little the outside world can know where you are.
Or maybe
But
they may be the 2026 surprise.
I mean, I'm just waiting for the shoe to drop. I'm sure a lot of people are.
I'm not going to. I agree with you. I'm not writing them off. They have produced one of the best AI applications before ChatGPT. So I'm
Yeah.
not going to write them off. They probably
Yeah.
have one of the most advanced teams.
But
as
to your
well.
question about the comparison with Meta and Google, I mean, the one thing I would say is like we reported this as well earlier this year. So we know that ByteDance, in addition to the Chinese language models that they have, right, which already have been used to power its various applications, they have also been working on English language LLM, and that they actually have teams in the U.S. and Singapore that have been working on this. However, we just haven't. Again, we just haven't seen anything released from that team. Neither have we seen evidence of TikTok using any of ByteDance's English language LLMs. So that adds to another layer of curiosity, in my opinion.
So one thing I was surprised by was ByteDance didn't really compete in anything that is text-based. I think it went straight for the multimodal because their strength is in image and video. They just haven't put something relatively significant that would change the multimodal space. It seems that currently Google is leading with, of course, recently the Nano Banana image creation piece, or even a bit of the VO3, but I haven't really seen a lot that is coming out from ByteDance because I actually naturally expected them to have a very good multimodal model as well.
Yeah, I mean, back when text or image to video generation was still a nascent thing. People were already predicting that ByteDance is going to be the clear leader in this, right? But then, to your point, we just simply haven't seen anything mind blowing yet.
Okay.
So
I think there's a lot to talk about ByteDance, but I've got to shift gears a bit because I
Sure.
got so much interesting stuff that I want to ask you. So I hardly get a chance to get you here. So let's talk about venture capital. So there is a story that you broke on HongShan. I was finding it very fascinating. I think HongShan had 9 billion in capital. I think it was one of the biggest raise that I think it was 3-4 years ago when it was announced. Right?
in 2022.
And they have only deployed a quarter of that 9 billion.
Yeah.
So what's the problem?
Yeah. So that story was something that I have been working on for a long time. So I think the talks in the China VC land have always been that they have trouble deploying all that huge war chest raised in the summer of 2022, which was also 12 months before the breakup within Sequoia, US, China, Southeast Asia, right?
Yes.
But obviously it's very hard to get the actual deployment ratio. So finally, the star was aligned. I was able to get all these numbers, and I did that story. I think it was out like 3 weeks ago, right? And so basically, while I was doing that story, I also looked into sort of the underlying reasons, and it was actually a lot more complicated than I imagined. So what you have happened is that, in 2023, everybody, so basically the post-COVID economic rebound in China just never happened. And then and then that sort of depressed the stock market.
Correct.
And then in the same time, I mean, we're talking about the onshore Asia stock market, right?
Yes.
But at the same time, in the offshore or the global stock markets, valuation has also been depressed because of Fed interest rates and war and whatever, right? The U.S. IPO market hasn't really recovered until very recently, right? So then that basically was the macro reason that sort of made exits very difficult. When exit become difficult, that means there will be very few big ticket growth to late stage deals.
Yes.
Deals that in which you can write like $300-400 million checks. Those deals basically just stopped existing. If you think about it, the sort of the golden era, right? When Ant Financial raised its last round, the C round in 2018, that was several $1 billion.
Yeah.
That was at the time the single biggest VC fundraising.
Well, that includes a lot of sovereign wealth funds as well.
Yeah, JSA Temasek. And then the top tier investors in that round, each of them wrote 500 million. Nowadays in China, you couldn't even find that many.
But I was
$500
in
million rounds.
New Street Asia conference last week, and I was told that there was a 200 million seed plus round. I forgot which company it was. I think it was a robotics company. It was an angel round, and the person hasn't even built that product yet.
Oh yeah, if it's in robotics, there's
right.
a lot of controversy.
Correct.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I mean, HongShan have so much money; they can deploy some of that, right?
Well, it's not like you deploy money for the sake of a deployment, right?
No. I know that, but given that robotics is so hot in China, right, and there are very few. In fact, you can almost say that with almost all the global VCs moving out of China, HongShan is probably best suited to capture most of this next wave of AI internet companies. I mean, China is going to most likely dominate in robotics. So why not deploy it now rather than, somebody can, 200 million angel funded business. I think that's something like if you do that in the US, Miriam Murati was 2 billion for angel round. So, that's about right?
And also Ilya Saskava, 1 billion in his first round.
Yeah, that's right.
No, I mean, here's the thing, right? That's just one example. if you look at the entire opportunity set,
Correct.
right? I think it's undeniable that there are just not that many, growth to late stage deals just become really scarce. And then the reason for that is first, as I said, exit become really hard. And as it become hard, there are two reasons for that. I just talked about the first reason
Yeah,
being the
correct.
macro public market valuation. But the second reason is more China unique. The Chinese securities regulator, CSRC, in the beginning of 2023 started implementing the new overseas listing regulation,
Yep.
which made it much, much harder for any Chinese companies to list overseas.
Not even Hong Kong?
Yeah. Doesn't matter as long as you do the listing outside of the A-share market. And then it's not just IPO, it captures follow-on as well. Any types of equity fundraising. So that also has made exits very difficult. And then in addition to that, overall, I'm sure we all know that China's economy just hasn't been doing really particularly well in the last 2 years since COVID, right? Since COVID ended, then that basically has another piece of impact on that. Then on top of all of this, the breakup or the divorce with Sequoia US also has had a set of impact, right? For example, now that US-China relations have become so tense, it's just impossible now for any China-based venture capital firms to do investments in the US. I mean, just 5-6 years ago, a lot of Chinese VC firms have like teams and even funds dedicated to, the Bay Area, right? That just becomes a lot harder, right? In the HongShan story I did with my colleague Zhuo, we mentioned this one specific case, which is like a very rare deal that HongShan invested this year, which is which is around funding 8 Sleep, which is like a sort of smart mattress
smart
maker.
mattress, yes.
Yeah.
The founder of the information is a fan of that mattress. She's always talks about it on More or Less.
I think by the way, they say they have the plan to expand to Singapore and China.
I'm dying for that mattress, but my wife disagrees with me.
I simply haven't had the opportunity.
It's a
to
tech
try.
bro thing, I'm sure.
But anyway, so in that deal, which is really not sort of like a direct investment in AI.
Yeah.
Right?
It's a mattress business.
Exactly. It's like a mattress topper that has some sort of smart sensory stuff, right?
But it has this cooling thing that's supposed to make the bed cool. You can control the temperature, all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it also collects the user's data, like your temperature, blood pressure, that kind of thing. So anyway, so even a deal like that, HongShan had to make sure that its investments is low enough to not warrant a board seat, so that it won't trigger a review by CFIUS.
So it just dawned on me, the HongShan's 9 billion fund, is it a multi-stage fund or is it something like
it's a series of funds.
Yeah.
So it's a 4 funds:
I see.
seed, venture, growth, and late stage.
I see. So maybe the growth and the late stage, they may not be deploying, but maybe the seed and series A, they're still deploying,
Yeah,
right?
that's exactly what my reporting showed. So like they actually, for the seed fund, is almost 50% deployed now, 3 years after it's being raised.
But can they go back to all the LPs and say, well, maybe it's better to now just deploy in the seed and A round, and then they can always revise the investment thesis, right?
Exactly. I mean, as my story also suggested, some of HongShan's LPs think that if there's just not a good opportunity set to deploy for growth and late stage deals, maybe you can consider returning some of the capital just out of goodwill, right? Obviously, no GP is obligated to do that, or maybe if they are looking at raising the next seed/venture fund, they can consider maybe just using, right, like repurposing the undeployed capital in the growth or late stage fund into the new, seed venture.
So I think moving forward, right? Just thinking about HongShan, right? Then I want to sort of flip to the startups, right? So now I think you got things like Uware, Genspark, Lovat. They're all targeting global users. You also have Manus, who have now moved to Singapore, and I don't know. The FT recently published this article that they incur the wrath of the Chinese users, and they also incur the wrath of the US venture capital. So I think there's still a shift of most of these companies are really going for global now rather than just a local domestic market. But I mean, if for any observer like myself looking into China, when I look at the startups, the competition within that market actually makes them very, very resilient. Once they come out of China, they become actually a very big force. I mean, to be quite honest, even in Southeast Asia, I see Chinese founders moving around. I usually just feel that, it's not the Southeast Asia founders I'm more worried about. It's the 996 Chinese founder that is really on the top of my mind. Yeah. How do you think? How do you look at them?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a sort of a coming of age, really, like naturally, because when I say coming of age, I mean collectively Chinese entrepreneurs.
Yes.
I think a lot of these founders are either my age or even a few years younger than me. I've talked to some of them. So I really can relate to why they want to build a business that targets the global market instead of just China, right? So in the good old days, you can build a business and start from China and then think about expanding beyond. However, that is not possible anymore. It's, as long as it is a software company that is consumer facing, as long as it's a consumer facing software product, immediately from day one, you have to think about, do I build for China or do I build for global ex-China? Because the examples of TikTok and Jing and many other smaller companies have already shown them that you cannot do both. It's not possible to serve both.
But ByteDance did both, right? I mean, there's Douyin.
No, but they built Douyin for China and then
TikTok
right.
for the rest of the world.
Yeah, exactly. So they cannot have one homogeneous product for overall, right? Because of the censorship
Correct.
and data regulation.
Whereas Shein and Temu, Temu has Pinduoduo before, and then have a separate product dedicated to the US market. Okay. Yeah. So Shein is probably the only exception that goes global.
Yeah, from day one, because by the time that their business, they figure out their business model, the e-commerce market in China is just too competitive.
Do you think that, for example, the Manus situation was that really the Chinese market is so competitive because
No, I don't think that's the case. So what I was gonna say is that if you are a consumer facing, so let's maybe take e-commerce out of the picture because it's not really, it's more of a you are providing services, right? It's not the same as the content, right? But if you look at all the other companies you just mentioned, they do touch on some kind of content, right? That because when you provide software to your users to help you build whatever kind of agentic tasks that the user want to do, it definitely involves generating content, right? Then once he does that, then you are faced with the censorship problem in China, right? That's just at the very operational level, right? At a higher level, then you also have all these problems with how do you want to be perceived? So basically, the mindset of a lot of these founders is that they grow up and were also trained in an era when China was fastly integrating with the world. So then they basically, their upbringing, when I say upbringing, it's not just education, but as well as how they were trained in their career. Their entire academic and professional upbringing is very globalized. if you think about the 30 and 40-year-old Chinese, the average 30 and 40-year-old Chinese in their knowledge of America, of the West, is definitely a lot better than, their counterparts of China.
Reminds me of a very interesting quote, but I forgot who said it, is that the Chinese of the 30s, 40s that you mentioned understands America very well. But if you do the reverse, they don't know anything about China, or they see it like some black box as well. And I think that's where the different versions of both sides, why there's so much differences, because the US doesn't understand China the same way.
Yeah. I mean, in a way, the way I like to look at it is a way, in a way, it reflects sort of America's superpower, a softer power. It reflects sort of the global order that was set since the end of World War II, right? But those are the fundamental factors. But going back to like these founders, I think they harbor this vision, like I want to build something. Like because if you are a builder, you want your the thing you are building to be really successful.
Yeah.
And how to measure that success?
It's by the whole world.
Exactly, right? Especially after they saw TikTok. Even though TikTok got a leg up from the acquisition of Musical.ly, still, right? I mean, even Musical.ly was built by Chinese programmers, right? So, and then on top of that, as you know, China has a very deep bench of very smart programmers and engineers through decades of education, emphasis on STEM, and also through so many Chinese students studying overseas. So naturally, you have the desire to compete at a global level, and the ability to do so. Then hence we now see this sort of wave of AI agentic AI startups that are trying to do this.
So I think one thing I just want to go before we move into another segment on robotics is I know you covered UWare a lot. So it's been uniquely positioning itself in the app creation space, right? Specifically with the concept of vibe coding. So is this going to be how you think Chinese startups going global, similar to what CapCut did in video editing?
That's definitely what the founder told me that he wanted to do, right? And then he was also he also worked at the CapCut team when he was at ByteDance. But whether that can succeed, it's too soon to tell. The company is still at a very early stage. I don't know. Have you actually tried?
I've tried
play
it.
With their stuff?
I'm still navigating. I find that the Chinese generative AI applications tend to be more holistic. That means they try to put 2-3 different point solutions and try to give you a flow solution. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work. Because because one of the things I think most generative AI solutions to me are what I call point solutions. That means it does one thing and does one thing really well. And then, but I didn't want that just one thing. I want this to touch this thing that I do. I want to give big example, right? Like Gamma is a presentation generator, right? Now I have to go to ChatGPT, make a few prompts, and then cut and paste the information and then do the generation.
Yeah.
What I would love to do is
One stop.
finish the content generation in ChatGPT, corrected everything. Then I said, can you send this to Gamma and generate me the presentation, right? And that hasn't happened. I have to still do the cut and paste, which is the frustrating on it. Whereas I see like Kimi, when I tried it myself, I realized, okay, they're trying to combine these two things. But maybe it's the way how we are so used to, in the rest of the world, we're so used to the US internet app ecosystem. When we use the Chinese apps, despite I have one single folder in my phone, it's called Chinese China, and every day I would just take a look at, try every UI to make sure I understand how the Chinese is thinking about it. I still find it's like the Galapagos Island. It's like this Galapagos Island with this set of apps, with the rest of the apps that I'm using. That's the feeling I'm getting from using Uware or even Kimi or all the now recently I'm also starting to try some of the Chinese LLMs as well. It gives me that sense that they are very holistic, but somehow maybe it's just the usage. It still feels very Chinese to me and not the way how the US apps are done.
Yeah, yeah. I see what you mean. And also I think the even the user interface, the UI design, and a lot of the things can also be a bit different. I would say this, right? I think all the agentic AI startups targeting consumers, not just in China, right? Not just those funded by Chinese founders, but all over, right? I think they're all under or going to be under a lot of threat by the bigger companies.
Yeah.
Because now they all realized they have to move on to this part as well. I mean, even in vibe coding, you see, Anysphere, which is the or Cursor, right? Cursor built a lot of its basically built its AI agents on top of Claude, and then now Anthropic is also trying to do like coming up with web coding solutions based on Claude. So it's just getting really cutthroat.
It is because it's like what Sam Altman say, right? If you are building an AI company, what is good when you look forward to the next 12 months, if a better large language model comes out and whatever you're building benefits from there, you should be happy. But in another 12 months, whether it's OpenAI or Anthropic clone what you are doing, you will be feeling shitty.
Yeah.
Which is precisely what's happening to Cursor right now. I already have people dropping out of Cursor, even including my own team, has now completely fully converted to Claude Code.
Yeah.
So that is telling me quite a lot about.
Yeah. It's like once the big companies identified, spot this area, and that this is the area we now want to get into, then you will be crushed very quickly, right? I mean, this is exactly what happened then with the Wingsurf.
Maybe it's the US companies learning to be behaving like Chinese companies. Maybe they don't admit it, right? But I heard recently, apparently, according to some VCs, is like based on ramped data. They think that the US San Francisco startups are working 996 because a lot of people were expensing on Saturdays for food in their offices, and then there was this new wave about US founders talking about going 996 too. So maybe it's the other way around. The reverse culture shift had actually started, but we just don't see it. But it's actually beginning.
Well, but I do think, I mean, I don't know Silicon Valley that well to say this.
But you have
my impression has been that they also work very hard when needed.
No.
Right?
They work very hard. But I think there is this new phenomenon. I think it started with a couple of years when Mike Morris said, look, you guys in Bay Area ask for what wellness spa, perks for whatever. Go to China, learn from the 996, and then it just becomes like, and then when you start having Elon saying you got to be hardcore.
Yeah,
right.
When he was doing the layoff for Twitter.
Like, so everybody, and then suddenly when Google is throwing off all the perks now. And even Meta is also cutting off the perks. It's like it's almost it's kind of a shift.
Yeah.
But I think part of it is really induced by the Chinese tech companies.
Probably.
Yeah. And it was like, hey, come on, the Chinese guys are kicking our ass. We have to go 996. Which I think even the part where the big company starting to challenge a small company, actually starting to feel is a little bit like how Chinese tech companies going after the small startups at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, however, though, I will say, I think in previous, like the recent AI wave, right? I think that has always been the way. Like the ecosystem has, I mean, the way capitalism and venture capital, the nature of it has always been structured that way, right? If you can't outcompete your competitors, you're better off being acquired.
True.
by
It's a bit like
the incumbents.
it's a bit like an old friend of mine who's your former predecessor always say Amazon is like a Chinese company. It's just that they don't know it yet. Okay, I want to get to the last part, which actually is the part I'm most excited about because I really want to have a robot. So one of the things is about the humanoid robots and also the growing US-China competition in physical AI. I think the question is, why does it? Because I think a lot of robots are still single function. Why is it such a big area now? It's becoming like, both sides are trying to build their own humanoid robots.
When I was talking to people in the space, what they told me is that, the arrival of ChatGPT in late 2022 made people in the field in researching physical AI and robotics realize that this is now the moment. This is now the sort of the magical wand that can really, take us, forward. Just as, when deep learning revived the dominant research of artificial intelligence in the 60s, right? So then what we're seeing now really is a result of people's excitement and then the advancement the researchers have made in the last 2 years since, 2.5 years since, right? And I think it just so happens that US and China both have the researchers in physical AI both have, identified this area and then, both sort of saw the opportunity that that came with generative AI, right? And then it's definitely, I think, one of the most controversial areas. When I say controversial, I mean, is this thing even real? Or is just another giant bubble that is waiting to burst?
Yeah, because one thing that I always never understand is they always keep talking about humanoid robots. But maybe for some tasks, you don't need... Humans are actually not very well formed of the task. Maybe some other particular form factor might be better. But it seems to be trending towards having humanoid boxing, etc. Yeah. Like what they saw in the World of AI in Shanghai, the WAIC conference, which is now like everyone who went there is like, wow, now there's a boxing robot. Yeah.
No, but in the US too, right? You see some of the startups that demonstrated, backflip, right?
Yes.
But how do you commercialize a robot that does backflip? What is the use case for that, right? People also question that, right?
Yeah.
So here is, in terms of the form factor, I'm just, going to tell you what people in the industry tell me, right? So there are two reasons they tell me why a humanoid has a compelling case. First is that, our world, like human being, we build our world based on our form factor as human. So that a humanoid robotic, if it works, would maximize the environment that we already have built, because then you basically have a robot roaming around in the form factor that is already optimized for human.
Okay.
So that is sort of the practical reason, right? And then there is also this romantic or philosophical reason, I was told, is that, it's just this complex that men want to be God, to play God.
No.
Men want to recreate itself with the same level form factor and intelligence.
Yes, okay. But then there is something like in Nick Herbert's Dune and even in Asimov's Foundation, the robots eventually got wiped out because of that problem that they became sentient.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I mean, obviously, that's why I say this is the philosophical reason, right?
Yeah.
However, going back to what you were saying, actually, if you look at some of the companies I talk to in China, actually, a lot of them are pretty practical. So, for example, if you look at Tesla Optimus, right, it has the dexterous hands, like, five fingers, all the motors.
And 400 actuators, which Elon Musk mentioned in the recent All-In Summit at 2025.
Yeah, and then also... 2 legs, and then the legs also have the foot also have all the toes, right?
Yes.
So that's like sort of following the human form factor to the very last minute detail, right?
Yes.
However, you can see some other companies in China, there will be like, the technology right now is just not there for a fully motorized dexterous hands or 2 legs. But then for the entire humanoid sector to have a future, it needs to have some kind of commercial use case first. Then why don't we build, for example, a gripper?
Yeah.
Like it's essentially like this, right?
Yes.
And also a wheelbase instead of having legs.
It's for fulfillment, packing.
Exactly.
Yes, exactly, for e-commerce.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and then while we do not, we will not, this company say, while we will not stop working on dexterous hands and then, to food solution, we want to commercialize, the technology we know now that works, right? So that's a sort of a more practical approach. Which one is better? We don't know. I think it's too soon to tell.
But let's say like the top 3 companies, UB Tech, Unitree, Robotics, right? I will also classify DJI as one of them as well. Are there any like next wave of robotic companies coming up, or is still this big 3?
There is a lot that are. I mean, I don't want to give any names because, first I don't want. I haven't talked to every single one of them, and even if I have, it's things move so fast, right? All I can tell you is that yes, there is a new wave of companies from China, and there's also a new wave of companies that supply specific parts. For example. Tesla Optimus actually has to source parts for the dexterous hands from China, right?
Yes.
And then this actually gets, here's what I really want to talk about in terms of the US-China competition in humanoid robotics. First, I think both in terms of technology, I think both US and China are sort of on the same starting point, right? No one now has like a clear upper hand in terms of solving the biggest problems and the biggest bottlenecks in this field.
Right, but manufacturing still China is leading.
So here is where it gets interesting. A lot of people think that China may already have a lead or is going to pull a lead in the space because of the manufacturing prowess that China has amassed. While that is not untrue, that actually is not the reason why China may eventually have pull the lead in the space. Because let's say all the factories in China, right, the supply chain, if they manage to produce better hands and whatever parts, they will not say no to, say, any American company that comes say, I want to order 10,000 hands from you.
Right.
Right? So that is why, the best smartphone still is,
Made in China.
Yeah, it's made in China, but it's an American company, right? So that is not where, China, before iPhone, there was no smartphone brands in China, right? So actually where China, the people in the humanoid industry in China tell me, where China's real advantage actually is from all the...
It's actually 1 to 100.
No, it's the test beds.
Correct. It's a test beds. And then what happens is that once there's a groundbreaking design from the US, they can evolve it to the next level with the manufacturing techniques and taking it to scale. It's just a little bit like DeepSeek, right? I mean, DeepSeek is built on the fact that they saw what was happening with the US. It's kind of, I don't know, is it innovation? Yes, it's a kind of different kind of innovation, but it's more continuous innovation. Or did I miss what you were saying?
No, let me just clarify a little bit. Let's just say, right, there is this, group of startups in China and a group of startups in the US, right? So training this physical AI device is extremely hard because you first need to gather the data. You need to work on a really complicated model, and then you need to gather the data. And I don't let's not go to the data. The
Yeah,
data is
we assume that works.
But then you have to, there's like rounds and rounds of iteration you have to do. Say, for example, you have this robot, and then you need to actually deploy this roll of robots into, like, say, a factory floor.
Yeah.
See how it works, and then gather, the on a trial and error basis, the things that worked and have not worked, and then fine tune that. But then if you look at it in the US, I mean, what kind of advanced manufacturing does the US still have these days beyond Tesla? But in China, right, all these, because the first batch of users of humanoid is actually, EV makers, car makers, right? And with China's advanced manufacturing, it does not only give China the edge in the manufacturing, in the supply chain perspective. It gives China a huge advantage in being this giant, like, test bed, this experiment.
Right.
Yeah, where your robots can be deployed.
And eventually someone would be the one that innovates the iPhone in China. Essentially the robot in China. That's what you're saying.
Yeah. So because, even if you build, like, say, other than, with the exception of Tesla Optimus, right? The other companies, the other robotic companies in the US, it will be very hard for them to find, like, factory floors in the US where they can actually deploy a robot on a trial basis and then gather the data and then fine tune the results based on that. Okay. And then do it like 100 times.
Okay.
Right?
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. So because we are still going to be running a bit out of time, so I'm going to have two quick questions, and then you just give me what's on your mind. Okay, what's the one thing people ask you about the Chinese startup ecosystem that you wish that they would ask you more? What's the one question that you wish that they would ask you more, but they don't?
I want people to ask me or have a conversation with me about redefining what is a Chinese startup these days.
Okay, what's a Chinese startup then?
I think the definition has to be broadened a lot more now, right? For example, Manus again, right?
Yes.
Is it a Chinese startup or not?
Yeah, it's
you can say yes and no.
Global startup built by Chinese,
but they started from China, right? After they became famous, then moved to Singapore, right? And then you also have, like, say, GenSpark, which started registered. They were founded in California, but they were incorporated in California, but founded by, Chinese entrepreneurs. Is that Chinese or not? I would say yes and no, right? It's just these days, in sort of the Western context, the name Chinese, the term Chinese has become somewhat a toxic label. So a lot of Chinese entrepreneurs even want to share that image themselves.
Yeah. They do. Their founders, even in this region, would not dare to take Chinese money because they want to go into the US market.
Yeah. And then that is all driven by geopolitics. But, I don't need to tell you, if you look at, I think at least half of the researchers that Meta approached from OpenAI are Chinese.
Yes.
Right? We have a saying in China these days now that the AI race is now between the Chinese in China and the Chinese in the US.
Yep. Okay, last question, okay? Looking into 2026, what are you going to be watching?
Wow. I mean, everything we just talked about, I think is very interesting, where I really feel like, we're at a point where so many fundamental forces are shifting and maybe, like, working against each other. But obviously the biggest, question mark is US-China, right?
Yeah.
That will just determine many, many, many things.
Okay.
Right.
So, Jing, we must do this again. Maybe when I'm in Hong Kong, we'll find a studio. I'm pretty sure the Poster Singapore guys can find me a studio there. And we should do it face to face, okay?
Yeah.
So, in closing, two quick ones. Any recommendations recently?
Yes, I actually do. So I highly recommend the new book, Empire of AI, written by my friend and former Wall Street Journal colleague, Karen Howe.
Yes, I'm going to get her on the show. I haven't
That's great.
finalized the date yet, but I'm trying to, we are more or less locked down with the date already.
Just a quick plug. So I'm actually hosting a book talk with Karen at the Foreign Correspondents Club in Hong Kong.
Tell her that I'm a person to interview. Thank you.
I will. But if any of your listeners are in Hong Kong, please, you're welcome to join the event in person at the FCC in Hong Kong.
It might be too late before that, but I'll try.
And then the other book I want to recommend, it's not a super new book, but I only started reading it recently. Is the autobiography of Fei Li, The Worlds I
I
See.
see. Yeah.
It's just such a great book.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how do my audience find you and the information?
So the information, you can find us www.theinformation.com. And since you mentioned deep research,
Yeah.
I really like it. By the way,
Okay.
I don't know how you as a subscriber finds it.
I tested because I haven't gone to your next user. I tried it. I actually enjoy, like, if I want to find very, very quick quips where I need to verify some information.
Yeah.
Like, I do recall, was this company invested in it? I
Yeah.
find it better than Crunchbase.
Yeah, because it's based on our own reporting.
Yes, because you all curated that information.
Yeah.
So maybe that is the difference. Whereas Crunchbase, sometimes the information is not correct because it's self-reported.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So in that sense, that's why.
Yeah. Yeah. So deep research sort of completely eliminates the AI, black box
Yeah.
issue because it's all trained on our reporting, right? But anyway, so I'm on Twitter at Jingyang HK. I still like to call it Twitter. Old fashioned that way. And then, you are welcome to email me, jing@theinformation.com, with any thoughts, comments, feedback, criticism.
I'm sure you're going to be in Singapore more often because Manus is here now.
Either I or my colleagues will.
Okay.
Yeah.
Definitely can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and everywhere now. And subscribe to us. And Jing, we'll talk again soon.
Thank you for having me.